we will be more clear about it, right? So choosing the best medium or channel for whatever we are trying to write, whatever message we are trying to deliver. Now the common media and channel options that we have are in front of you. Oral medium in-person channel, oral medium digital channel, written medium print channel, written medium digital channel, visual medium print channel, and visual medium digital channel, right? Now the simplest way to categorize media choices are divided into oral, written, and visual, right? And on the other hand, the channels that we have, they can be divided into digital, print, or in-person channel, right? So these are the two bases on which we are dividing our channel. So starting from the first one, oral medium in-person channel. Now it is very obvious from the word itself that in this case the medium would be oral, which means you would be speaking something, you would be delivering a message orally, and the channel would be in person, which means that both the parties would be present at that particular place at that particular time, right? So it would be a live form of communication where two people or more than two people, the senders and the receivers, they would be communicating in an oral medium, and they would be in a live communication. They would actually be there in person, right? There are certain advantages and disadvantages of these as well. We will try to touch them after we have discussed all these different types. Then we have oral medium digital channel. In this case, the medium again is oral, right? Orally something is being communicated, but the channel, it won't be a live or in-person channel. It would be digital channel. Through a digital medium, something would be transferring. Now for example, if you send a voice message to a friend on WhatsApp, now this would be oral medium and digital channel, right? Radio, again it's oral medium digital channel. Maybe you have a type of a podcast or anything which works in your office or things like that, right? So message was actually being delivered in oral medium and the channel was used digital. Then we have written medium and print channel. Now in this case, the message is not being delivered orally, it is being delivered in writing. The form that message takes is actually the written form, right? Then it can be delivered through a print channel, maybe a letter in a hard form, right? Newspaper is also an example of that. Different flyers that we receive often at our homes or at our offices in a hard copy, right? Or maybe the billboards that we see, whatever form of communication which is written and is delivered through print channel, right? Then we have written medium and digital channel. The medium is written, but the channel would be digital. Maybe you're receiving an ad through your laptop screens or your mobile phones and any other digital device, right? So email which we receive, it is an example of written medium and digital channel, because the medium of communication is written and the channel through which we receive it is always digital. It can be a mobile phone, it can be a laptop or anything. The next we have visual medium and print channel. Now in this case, information is being delivered through visuals, right? In a visual form. And print channel, again a hard copy print channel. We have different images on our billboards. We receive some flyers and brochures or pamphlet type of things, and they have a lot of visuals in them, right? So these are the examples. Then we have visual medium and digital channel. Again, the medium is visual, but the channel is digital, right? We are not receiving anything in a hard form, but we are receiving something maybe on our mobile or any other digital device, right? So these are the possible options that we have whenever we are trying to deliver a messages. Now each of them have different advantages and disadvantages. We will just discuss a few of them. I have attached this image so you can actually read them later on in detail. I would like to mention that this image and all this information, it is being gathered from the book Business Communication Today by Cortland, John and Roshan Lal Raina, right? It is the 14th edition of the book, published by Pearson. So coming back to our topic, starting with the first one, oral and in-person communication. Now, there are many disadvantages and advantages. The first advantage would be that it provides an opportunity for immediate feedback, right? Because both of the parties are there, they're face to face, and immediate feedback can happen. So this is an advantage. Easily resolve misunderstandings and negotiate meanings, right? In usual cases, when once the meaning is negotiated or recreated, we cannot do much about it. But in this case, the negotiated meanings and the newly reformed meanings, recreated meanings, we can actually fix them. Disadvantage: it restricts participation to those physically present, right? People who are physically present at that time can participate in that communication, but people who are not there, they cannot participate, right? Unless recorded, it provides no permanent verifiable record of communication, right? Now this is very important. The record of communication is very important, especially in business cases and official cases. But the oral in person, if it is not recorded, then you cannot actually later on prove anything. Going to the second one, oral digital, it has advantages like it can provide an opportunity for immediate feedback, same as the first one. People are there live, but again they are communicating one-on-one orally, so immediate feedback is possible. It is not restricted to people in same location. Now this is very important. Take the example of our online classes. Now that is oral digital communication, right? But it is not restricted to participants in the same place. In the first type, the oral in person, it was a disadvantage because it was only restricted to people who were actually present at that time. But in this case, it is not restricted. Take example of this class. All of us, we are right now we are sitting in different locations, but we are a part of this conversation, right? Disadvantage can be that it lacks non-verbal cues, right? Now non-verbal cues, your facial expressions, your gestures, these type of thing also play a role in a communication. But when you are digital, so it may not be happening as good as it was happening in the first in-person mode. Then we have written, printed. Advantages are that it allows the writer to plan and control their messages, right? In the first two, because they are orally, we do not have much time to plan and control our messages, but in the written, printed, we have this facility. It can reach geographically dispersed audiences, right? Offer a permanent and verifiable record, right? In written form, when something is brought in a written form, it definitely comes under the record, right? Then the disadvantage we have that it offer limited opportunities for timely feedback. Yes, emails most of the time we send, or any other form of communication, there is no guarantee that we can actually have in-time feedback. There is definitely no immediate feedback, but timely feedback at times is also not non-existent, right? Then we have lack of rich non-verbal cues. Again, in live in-person communication we have this, but in this case we do not have the gestures and other verbal cues that we may get from the receiver or the sender. Then we have written digital form. It has advantages like fast delivery, can reach to a lot of people in a very short time. It gives us flexibility of multiple formats and channels, right? From microblogs to wikis, right? Then we have flexibility to structure the message in creative ways in whatever we want to do, right? I'll give you the example of the presentations that you people submitted, which were very good, by the way. We will be discussing them soon. The disadvantage can be that it can be limited in terms of reach and capacity. It requires internet, a good internet on your mobile phone or your computer. It is vulnerable to security and privacy problems, right? And the list goes on. Then we have visual printed. It can quickly convey complex ideas and relationships, right? most of the times you would see diagrams in your books, and when you look at those diagrams, you understand a lot of stuff from that one single diagram, their relationships and how these things are related to each other, what type of role, what variable is actually playing in a certain situation. Now, if we try to explain it orally or in writing, it would take a lot of time and effort, but visually it conveys complex ideas and relationships quite easily, consuming less time. A disadvantage can be that it can require an artistic skill to design. It can be expensive to print, right? Then we have visual digital. It has advantages like we can personalize and enhance the experience for audience members. Now, visual digital, here we can personalize the messages for our consumers, right? Personalization means that when you try to tailor your messages according to the audience, right? So every person you are targeting, it is very much possible that that person might be getting a different message from the other one, right? Disadvantage can be that potential time, cost and skills needed to create. It is a disadvantage. It may require a lot of time, cost or skill. It can also require a large amount of bandwidth, which you may not have at times. So but there is a list of advantages and disadvantages you can see in the table in front of you, so you can read them one by one and try to understand it, right? Then the next thing is that whenever we are trying to communicate digitally, so mobile devices, they are a very common platform nowadays, but there are certain challenges associated when we are trying to communicate on mobile devices. The first challenge is that screen size and resolution. Definitely the screen size and resolution of mobile screen, it may not be as sufficient as we have on our TV screens, on our laptops. So things might get easily cluttered on mobile devices, so it is a bit difficult to manage. Then we have input technologies. Sending input into laptop, whether you are trying to text or what else method you are using, it is a bit difficult as compared to when you are actually writing something on a laptop or a computer or any other machine. It might be simple to send a simple text, but when it comes to long and large documents, then it gets a bit difficult. So this is a challenge. Bandwidth, speed and connectivity limitations. Definitely when we have the workstations that we have, the computers which we use, they can receive a good bandwidth, they have better speed and connectivity, but in case of mobile phones, we have limitations there. Data usage and optional costs. Mobile internet, when you are using it, the data actually costs you, and other costs are also associated with these, maybe getting a good phone at the first place, right? So there are challenges when we are trying to use mobile phone. The next thing is that whenever we are choosing media and channel, there are certain factors that we need to consider. The first one is richness, right? What is richness? Richness is the medium's ability to convey a message through more than one formal cue, right? What are the informational cue? What are the informational cues? We have visual cues, we have verbal cues, and we have vocal cues, right? So the richness would be defined of a certain channel. The richness of a certain channel would be defined at whether it can convey our message through visuals and verbals and vocals or not. If a channel is only capable of conveying our message through vocals, then we cannot conclude that it is a rich channel, right? The richness of that channel would be low. But if a certain channel, it can convey our message through vocals, through verbals and through visuals, then in that case we would say that it is a rich channel, right? The second point is that whether it facilitates feedback or not, right? And the third point is that it establishes personal focus. If a channel is able to do these three things, then we can say that the richness of this channel is higher, right? And definitely the richer is the better, but again it depends on situation to situation, and sometimes in some situations you may not need a lot of richness, right? Formality, your media choice is a non-verbal signal, right, that affects the style and the tone of your message. The impact of your message, how your message is actually perceived, it also depends a lot about on what channel are you using. For example, when you get a memo in your office or you get an official email, now that sounds very formal and very official. But if you receive a message on your Facebook inbox, or you receive a message on your WhatsApp, so it does not sound that formal, and maybe at times that important, right? So we need to consider that. Media and channel limitations. Every medium and channel, it has their limitations, and we need to consider them. Again, I would say that it depends upon situation. From situation to situation, things are different, right? So what sort of media is appropriate, what sort of channel is appropriate in what situation, that one can only decide when you are actually involved that particular situation. Urgency. Some media establish a connection with the audience faster than the others, right? So maybe if something is very urgent, maybe you can use a WhatsApp, or maybe a regular text message, or maybe even a phone call. But if something is not very important, so we can leave it up to the email. If a person is not immediately checking it, that person would probably check it the next day, right? So urgent messages, they can be sent through platforms like these, but one must be careful so that the privacy and the time and the workload, these type of things should be respected, right? It may not be appropriate if you send someone a meeting message regarding tomorrow, maybe at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? So that will not be appropriate. Then cost is also a very important factor, how much it's going to cost you. Again, it depends upon situation to situation. In some places, some cost might be worth it, but in other cases that cost may not be worth it. So it also has to be considered well. Audience preferences should also be considered. Audience preferences means that in what form, in what medium, on what channel the consumer actually expects or prefers to receive the message, right? It also need to be considered. It varies from situation to situation. And then security and privacy, these type of things, these are also very important to consider. Whenever if you are trying to share some sensitive information, so the security and the privacy concerns, they must be taken into an account, right? Then the next point, the fourth point and the last point of the planning section of the three-step writing process is organizing your information, right? Organizing the information is very important. Before we try to actually communicate, we need to organize our communication, right? It's exactly like the way you prepare before you are actually delivering a presentation in your classrooms. We need to organize our information. We need to be clear about. We actually need to logically build it, logically construct it from step to step. Inside organizing your information, the first thing that we need to do is to define our main idea, right? What are we actually going to talk about? What sorts of information do we need to have, right? So defining your main idea, the first thing is brainstorming. We can actually discuss in a group of people. We should sit and we should discuss that what sort of ideas can be generated. Now, working alone or with others, try to generate as many ideas and questions as possible without stopping, right? Without criticizing, without thinking that whether it is good or bad. Just brainstorm and keep writing the ideas, whatever comes around, right? Whether you are alone or if you are in a group, Once all the ideas, some of them might be very irrelevant, some of them may be very vague, but you will definitely find something after you are done with the brainstorming and you look whatever ideas you have gathered, so something good might come along. Then we have the journalistic approach. The journalistic approach, as discussed previously as well, asks questions like who, what, when, where, why, and how. Start asking these questions from yourself and your idea will actually start getting more refined. Then we have question answer chain. Start asking questions from the audience perspective, from the audience point of view, and then try to answer them as well. So this idea, this experience, this practice would also try to more clarify, more scrutinize your idea. Then storyteller's tour. Some writers find it best to talk through a communication challenge before they actually try to write it, right? So what you can possibly do, you just record yourself while you are speaking about your idea or your presentation, and then listen to it. So when you listen to it again, you will definitely find places where you can actually improve. So in this way you can refine your message, your idea. Mind mapping, another thing. Before actually writing it or before delivering whatever communication you have, you make a map in your mind about how you are actually going to organize, what are going to be the main headings, then the subheadings, how one heading is being connected to the other one, right? The next thing is to limiting your scope. Now this is very important. Defining and limiting your scope is very important. You should actually draw boundaries and you should definitely stay between those boundaries. Yes, if we are not clear on our scope, then it is very much possible that our communication it might go somewhere else. We may not be able to achieve our objectives. Then choosing between a direct and indirect message approach, we need to choose it. The direct approach, it starts with the main idea, right? You use the direct approach when you mean business. You start with the main idea, such as your recommendation or conclusion or a request, and then you follow with different supporting evidence and whatever information you want to give it, right? So in direct approach, you just directly go there and you just present your main idea, right? After that, you carry on with supporting arguments, supporting evidence, things like that. In an indirect approach, you start with the evidence, you try to build up a situation, and ultimately you land up on your main idea. Now these are the two basic approaches that we usually can go with. Again, it depends on person to person, on situation to situation, that how you actually want to go about it. Then we have outlining your message. Outlining your message is also, it is very important because it gives you a most logical and a most effective way to present your points and your supporting details, right? Maybe you want to add something in a chronological order, or maybe you want to add something on the level of importance that they have. So in a certain logical order, you may want to outline your content, right? Sorry, I had to pause. I had to attend to something, right? So we were talking about starting outlining your message, right? So starting with your main idea, right? The main idea helps you establish the goals and general strategy of your message, right? It summarizes two vital considerations. Two important things are actually being clarified here. What you want your audience members to think or do, the first thing, and the next thing is why should they do so. Two things: what you want your audience to do or think, and the second is to why would actually they do whatever you want them to do, right? So when you try to answer these things, you would be able to outline your message. Then stating major points. You may be presenting with some financial justifications or anything like that, right? So just the major points which you want to touch, which you want to clarify, we need to add those after the main idea. Then provide examples or evidences, again supportive arguments, maybe some supporting facts and figures. Different type of details can be added here. We have different types of details. We have details in the form of facts and figures. You can try to establish your points using facts and figures. We can use example or illustrations. We can use certain descriptions. We can use narration, a storytelling type of thing. We can use some reference to an authority, right? And we can use visual aids. Facts and figures, examples or illustrations, descriptions, narrations, reference to authority, and visual aids. These are the things which would help us to add weight to our main idea, to add weight to the major points which we actually stated earlier, right? So the next and the last thing, it is also an important thing we need to keep it in mind. Building readers' interest with storytelling techniques. Storytelling at times is very important. Now, maybe in sending a formal email to your boss or to your subordinates, storytelling may not be the way to go there, but in cases where you are presenting something, where you are actually trying to convince someone, where you are actually trying to grab attention of people, in these type of places, storytelling actually is a very effective and a good technique. In fact, there is a saying from a very famous management consultant. It says it's hard to imagine your career going anywhere if you cannot tell a story, right? So in communication, especially in presentations or things like that, storytelling is a very good technique. It can help people deliver information, and the good thing about storytelling is that the receiver actually is fully attentive towards you, right? With the undivided attention, the receiver is actually fully attentive towards you. Now this is very important. It is a very rare luxury to have. So when you try to deliver information in the form of a story, so the listeners, they will be very much attentive to you. Storytelling is an efficient way to organize many business messages because it helps readers to personalize the messages and understand causes and consequences, right? So if you want to if you want to tell people about a certain event that took place and how things happened and what were the reasons and what were the consequences, so you can make a story out of it. So in that case, the audience, you would be having their undivided attention because they would be interested in that story, right? That was it for today. I hope to have a good question answer session in our live class. Have a good day. Allah Hafiz.